Hi everyone, so this is our lesson 23 about the Crusader states, the second and the third crusade, Salah ad-Din or Saladin and Richard Lionheart. Let's take a look at our objectives. We will understand how the Crusaders organized the newly occupied territories in Asia. We will learn about the unsuccessful Second Crusade. We will compare the characters of Richard Lionheart and Salah ad-Din, and we will learn what happened during the Third Crusade. All right, so after the First Crusade, of course, the First Crusade ended with the Crusader victory, and Jerusalem was taken by the Crusaders. The Muslim population and the Jewish population was massacred. Jerusalem was taken by the Christians, and the area, the Middle East and the Holy Land in general, was occupied by Christians, Christian forces, and they organized the land into so-called Crusader states. These were run by European knights. The names of these important states, not all of them were kingdoms, okay? The county of Edessa, which was established in 1097, the Principality of Antioch. Antioch is also another city over there. The county of Tripoli, which is in Lebanon, of course, the Lebanese Tripoli, not the Libyan, and the kingdom of Jerusalem, the only kingdom that had a king, and of course that was established right after the First Crusade, when the Crusaders took Jerusalem for the first time at the end of the First Crusade, 1099. Please remember the important cities: Edessa, Antioch, Tripoli, and Acre. Acre was on the territory of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and now it's on the territory of Israel. Please remember the important cities. Remember the names of the Crusader states. They may come in your assessment. All right, you can see a Crusader knight in this picture. We will be talking about them in our next lesson. Crusaders built castles to establish control over these territories. Of course, some of these Crusader castles all around the Middle East. Okay, some of them are in Syria. Some of them are in what is kind of like Palestine or Turkey, the south of Turkey. This picture is this picture shows you a very, very famous Crusader castle. It's called Crac de Chevalier or Qalat al-Husn in Arabic. It's not far away from Aleppo in Syria. I have been there. I visited this castle several times. It is absolutely magnificent. And as you can see, they are always built on higher ground. So of course it gives you an excellent view. You can see to a very huge distance. They are extremely well fortified, very strong walls, small windows, and very well protected. So these were some of the Crusader castles. There are hundreds, of course, in the Middle East right now. Some of them in better shape, some of them are more ruined, but they are all magnificent, even in their ruins. And these were stations for knights who could be summoned anytime, and these were Crusader castles in which through which Crusaders protected their territories. Now let's talk a little bit about the Second Crusade. The Second Crusade was a quite unsuccessful one, right? Of course, when the First Crusade ended, Jerusalem was taken by the Crusaders, and the Muslims and the Jewish population was massacred. As you can imagine what kind of response it created amongst the Muslims, and obviously the Muslims created their own holy war against the Christians, which was their jihad. Of course, during the 1100s, and in 1144 they took Edessa, which prompted a response from the German and the French king. They assembled an army of 50,000 men, and they went against Edessa. But instead of taking Edessa, they thought they are going to take Damascus first, which was a very terrible decision, obviously, because Damascus was a really, really well fortified and very strong city, and the siege of Damascus only lasted a few days. It collapsed, and the Crusaders went home. They never even set foot in Jerusalem or the Kingdom of Jerusalem at all. So from Damascus, they went home. So the second crusade ended in failure. Now, this is the time when Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, or Saladin, as he's known in the West, rises to power. He's a Kurdish, he comes from a Kurdish family, which is in northern Iraq right now. He became the leader of the Muslim world by 1170, and he manages to unify all the Muslims against the Christians, and he called for jihad, but his first attempt failed. But he didn't give up. Of course, he gathered an even larger army, okay, and then he had a very huge victory against Hattin. He was an excellent tactician. He lured the Christian soldiers out from their crusader castles, and they went after him into the desert. Salah ad-Din knew where the water could be found, but the crusaders fell into this trap, and out of thirst and hunger, they were already extremely exhausted by the time they met Salah ad-Din's forces, who killed and slaughtered most of the army. He also took prisoners Guy of Jerusalem, Guy de Lusignan, and Reynald of Châtillon. He was a crusader knight and a very famous and important person. I believe he was a Templar. Then, of course, Salah ad-Din, after this huge victory, besieges Jerusalem and recaptures it for the Muslims. As the Christians were leaving, he did not massacre them, and he did not allow his soldiers to take their property. Some of the Crusaders were sold into slavery, but in general, the population was left unharmed. Okay, Salah ad-Din later on was defeated by Richard Lionheart, because after the very, very terrible and unsuccessful Second Crusade, and after the loss of Jerusalem, Richard Lionheart raises money and funds and sets off to start the Third Crusade. And Salah ad-Din, he meets Salah ad-Din at Acre, one of these very famous Crusader cities. So he was defeated at Acre. He has to surrender Acre at 1191. But eventually, they meet at Jerusalem. Richard Lionheart cannot capture Jerusalem. They make a truce, so they sign a peace treaty between each other. And Jerusalem will be controlled by Muslims, but they will allow pilgrims into the city, and Acre will be controlled by the Christians. Of course, there are loads and loads of stories about Salah ad-Din as being the merciful. Some of these stories are in your book. Some of them are in the other book that we would take a look if you were at school. Now, they say that in 1191, a Frankish woman's baby was stolen and sold, and Salah ad-Din used his own money to buy this child back. Also, the significant story of allowing the Christians to leave, although every Muslim and every Jewish person was massacred by the Christians when they took it after the First Crusade. Newer accounts say that Salah ad-Din actually wanted to massacre these people, but he changed his mind after a while, so he allowed them to leave. During the Battle of Jaffa, he sent a new horse to Richard. Apparently, when he heard that Richard's horse was killed. This is a picture of his tomb, which is in the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. It's very nice. Of course, you cannot go inside it. It's protected by a kind of like a grill, but you can see through, and it's a really magnificent place to go if we ever happen to go to Damascus again. Of course, the Umayyad Mosque is one of the most beautiful and the oldest mosques in Islamic history. It is absolutely worth visiting it. You will be able to see it there. Now let's talk a little bit about Richard Lionheart. If we had a lesson, of course, we would be comparing these two big leaders. Was Richard actually Lionheart? Was he so brave and wonderful as he is often presented, and is Salah ad-Din such merciful and such an amazing person as they usually present him? We would be looking at facts like, for example, these ones. Maybe some of them might be a little bit surprising for you. Now, Richard had very little interest in England. Don't forget that he was French, actually. He spoke French, and he did not speak any English. Now, he organized the Third Crusade alongside the German Emperor and the French King. Yes, it's true. He was a very fierce Christian, and he defeated Salah ad-Din at Acre, which we mentioned earlier. He tried to take Jerusalem twice, but he failed, and he never set foot in Jerusalem. He was forced to make peace with Salah ad-Din. Now, if you remember, we mentioned that earlier when we spoke about John and his brother trying to take the throne while he was on the Crusades. Now, he had to, of course, when he heard this news that John is trying to take the throne, he went back home, but he was captured, and the country had to pay quite a huge ransom to the German emperor to buy Richard's life, basically. And after that, he spent most of his time in France fighting. He didn't really spend a lot of time in England, right? But of course, the English history considers Richard Lionheart one of the most important English kings and monarchs. This magnificent statue is in front of the Houses of the Parliament. Next time, if you go to London, please go and visit, of course. Now, his death was also not very heroic, honestly. He died in 1199, besieging a castle because of an infected wound. And just imagine, he got injured because he forgot to put on his armor before the battle. So that's not a very heroic death, obviously. Let's take a look at the map. All right, you can pause the video right now and you can take a look at these lines showing you the first, the second, the third, and the fourth crusade. We will be talking about the fourth crusade a bit later on. All right, so I would like you to remember the outcome of each crusade. The first crusade ended with the Crusader victory. The second one was completely unsuccessful, and it was a failure. Didn't even reach the Holy Land. It only reached Damascus. And the third one was the one in which Salah ad-Din and Richard Lionheart were involved. Please remember how it ended. It ended with a truce. All right, so just a few facts about the Third Crusade. After the Second Crusade, of course, Saladin united the Muslim world to protect Jerusalem. He won a great victory at Hattin. You can see this picture, all right? The king of Jerusalem is bowing in front of this magnificent tent in which Salah ad-Din is sitting. Of course, after the victory of Hattin, where the king of Jerusalem was captured and Jerusalem was taken, Richard Lionheart, as a response, of course, he mobilized. He taxed his people to organize the most expensive military campaign of the Middle Ages. And crusaders and food and all kinds of provisions and supplies were sent by sea to the Holy Land to support this effort. And of course, the crusade was led by himself, Richard himself. King Frederick Barbarossa of Germany died on the way there. King Philip of France was also involved in the battle, but clearly Richard Lionheart was the leading force. Salah ad-Din, as we mentioned earlier, Saladin surrendered Acre in 1191, which was a huge victory for Richard Lionheart. But Richard could not take Jerusalem eventually, and as we mentioned earlier, it ended with a truce. Jerusalem will be in the hands of the Muslims. Acre will stay in Christian hands, and Jerusalem allowed, or Salah ad-Din allowed the pilgrims to visit Jerusalem whenever they wanted. Right, so this is your homework, please, 58, 59. Please read the pages and answer your questions on page 59. Thank you.